meet Zoe. My name is Stephanie, as you know, and Zoe is here today to talk about different money mistakes that she made and that she's been working on fixing. So, Zoe, if you want to first tell me what were some of these money mistakes that you made as a new grad?
My biggest money mistake was associating my new job title with a specific lifestyle that I needed to have. And that lifestyle was a really expensive one. So I got hired right out of university as a consultant. And I had this vision that consultants were, super well dressed and wearing designer items and, living in like fancy places and basically just like an insane lifestyle inflation was what I thought I was entitled to and what I thought I was supposed to do. So I took on, an expensive lease living by myself. I spent a ton of money on clothes because I thought we needed like an entire Aritzia, wardrobe, just lots of things that I associated with being a consultant that were really unnecessary. I think that was like my biggest money mistake because yeah, before I'd even made money, I was already in debt for spending to bring myself up to this like new lifestyle that I thought I was supposed to have.
What I've seen in your YouTube videos, you're also very disenchanted with the job that you ended up getting.
Yeah.
So you were also living a lifestyle that was out of your means, but then you weren't happy about the work, but maybe continuing the job because it was helping to pay the bills.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Like one thing too that's like another huge mistake is I thought I don't know why I thought this, but I thought that the salary that is on your offer is the salary that goes into your pocket. And it's not, right? Like taxes come out of that and you lose a bunch of money. So I had made this budget with a certain salary and then lost like what 30% of it to taxes. Um, but yeah, my biggest expense was my rent for my apartment and I had no intentions of moving. I hated my job, but like I couldn't go anywhere because I knew that no other job, unless it was similar to this one, would allow me to like keep up with this lifestyle or even just pay my basic, rent.
right, right. So when you started living this lifestyle, was it like a complete 360 from how you were living as a student? Like what were your student expenses like versus what you started on day one of getting hired as a consultant?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I'm going to talk about my rent a lot, but that was my biggest one. So I think I almost tripled my rent, um, going from my student apartment to my adult apartment, because I went from living with a roommate in like a different part of town. We had like an insane deal. Our rent between the two of us was $900.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was really cheap. And then I moved to like a trendy neighborhood and like a nicer apartment. So that went way up. I've always been like a bit of a shopaholic. So that didn't change that much. It was more just like the style of clothes I was spending on were now work clothes, which is a big joke because now we all work from home and I wear sweatpants every day. So yeah, mostly it was like rent. And then also I started going out a lot more. I know as a student, most people go out a lot, but I feel like I didn't go out that much as a student, but I started going out a lot and like going out for like really expensive cocktails and drinks and like happy hours, St. Esther after work too. And those bills were just like insane.
So at the same time that your finances were changing with regards to your new lifestyle, um, did you feel like you were saying before that you felt like you couldn't change jobs because of this like situation that you'd set up for yourself?
Mhm.
So I know that you eventually ended up switching jobs. And so how did you go about changing all of the lifestyle? Did you do it beforehand? Did you do it once you changed the job? How did you end up doing that?
Yeah, so I I got to a point where I was so miserable that I remember speaking with my parents about it and they were just like your happiness comes first, like you'll figure it out. So if I needed to take a pay cut, I was kind of just like, okay, I'll figure it out. Like happiness really does come first. But that actually wasn't my like lifestyle change tipping point, although it could have been. And I was ready to make sacrifices too. Like I really was. Um, but it's because of COVID that brought the change actually.
Okay, okay. Do you want
Yeah.
to elaborate on that or
Yeah, sure. So sorry, I didn't know if that was like another question or
no, go
um
ahead.
yeah, so when COVID hit, I kind of realized that I was in this like vicious cycle of like basically I would spend on my credit card all month, and then next month my first paycheck I would pay my rent, my second paycheck I would pay my credit card, and I had no money left. And so I was just like in this cycle, and I was like, I am going nowhere. And then COVID hit and I stopped going out. I stopped spending on clothes. Like I stopped spending on a lot of things, and suddenly I had all this money in my bank account, and it felt so good. And how good it felt to just see that money and not stress about, oh my God, how am I going to pay off my credit card bill, or like feeling guilty for the clothes that I bought or the drinks that I went out for. Like it was just such a good feeling that it almost became like addicting. And I realized that this is something that I want to pursue now more than just spending for the sake of spending. So I didn't move. I didn't like reduce any, of my, because I do like a certain lifestyle. And I think, we work hard. We deserve to like live in a place that's nice, like choose your luxuries, I guess. Right. But I did not need to be buying a new item from Aritzia every week anymore. So I just like stopped that, stopped, drinking so much, stopped eating out so much. And I think it's like a positive, it's like, there's like a debt snowball, and then there's like a feeling good saving money snowball, and you just got to transfer onto the other one.
So like your budget obviously always fluctuates, but for you, home was the one that doesn't really fluctuate. So
yeah,
very important to do,
yeah.
to pick the things that are very important to you.
And I think, that can be a interesting like lesson for a lot of people, is like, you can look and be like, oh, like how does somebody have all of these nice things, right? Like you look at someone who has a really nice car, let's say, and you're like, oh, how do they have the same job as me? Like, how do I have that car? How do they have that car? And it's like, okay, well, if you really want it, just make it work. You can get a side hustle, you can get a second job. Like there's so many ways to make things work besides just a 9 to 5, that I think once you start getting creative, you can live any kind of lifestyle that you want. You just find ways to make it work.
Yeah. I love that you're saying that, because there's a popular person on Instagram. Her name is Paula Plant or Pant, and her theory is, she says, you can afford anything, but you can't afford everything. And I think that's exactly what you're saying right now, is that for you, the apartment was what was really important, and the other things were not so much. So that's how you came to afford it. Let's say you're talking to a Zoe 2 months shy of graduating from university, about to start on a job market. Tell me, what would you do differently? What would you have kept the same? Tell me all about that.
One big thing I would tell myself is understand that tax is coming off of your salary. Like understand that, and also understand like debt repayment versus savings. And I didn't really think about savings when I made my budget either. Like my budget was literally like line 1 minus line 2 minus line 3. Like I didn't account for anything. So I think I would have actually, a good advice would be to like speak to more people and watch more videos and understand what life expenses actually exist outside of university, and like make a proper budget.
So when you look at your budget now, what you spend things on, you were saying before that you plan for more things, and that now you're not just paying your rent, paying your credit card. Has this mean that you started savings? Are you paying off debt like in a different way from before? How are things different now versus last year, let's say?
Yeah, good question. So my biggest focus right now is debt repayment. I find I have a bit of an addictive personality. And so it's like, if I'm not addicted to spending, I'm addicted to something else. And right now it's like my debt repayment. So I've doubled my monthly debt repayment since last year. So that's been really cool. And I've been able to have a video coming out about this too. But I've actually calculated it. And this month I was able to pay off not in the month, but sorry, this month marks the $20,000 of debt repayment in 1 year. So
wow.
Yeah. So
Congrats.
I'm really proud of that. And that's just been like my biggest spend. Like all summer, it's just been like money towards my debt, money towards my debt. And that's been like my biggest spend of the summer, really.
Okay, that's incredible. That's a huge amount. So like hats off to you.
Thank you.
Mazel tov on that. So I'm not sure where you're at in your debt repayment journey, but what do you see once your debt is paid off, where do you see this extra money going towards? What do you want to do with that?
Yeah. So I definitely want to start saving. Like, I really want to keep the debt repayment mindset, but just instead of putting it towards debt, I'm putting it into savings. Like, my goal is to keep that number the exact same, if not higher, that I'm putting into savings. I really want to start a savings account because I want a dog. So I want to have a little savings account for my dog. And then the very boring answer of buying property is something that I would
Yeah,
like to do. And then
definitely
also
not boring.
it's very, very typical. And then the retirement fund as well. And I would like to start getting into investing, like playing around with buying stocks and stuff. I feel like it's going to be quite empowering. So those are kind of my next goals on the horizon.
But I'm glad that you're planning, like, so now you're looking at what you want to do long term. You're planning the costs that are relevant to it. Like, you're planning your short-term goals. So starting to put your money, instead of debt repayment, to put it towards savings. And then your longer term is retirement savings and then investing. So that's really great because you're making goals for yourself that doesn't even include your life goals. Those are just your finance goals. And it's so important to have all of those. One of the pieces of advice that I give to new grads is to, as much as possible, to continue living your student lifestyle. I mean, you could maybe move from having 17 roommates to only having 4, but to try as much as possible to slowly increase our luxuries so that we're not going ahead and diving ourselves into debt, because uh, oftentimes a new grad salary is really not high at all, and we go from thinking like, I'm not paying money anymore, I'm making money, so I should act like it. And lifestyle creep is a fully common and valid issue that new grads face.
Like, if you need to, you can go buy tomorrow's outfit after work the first day. So just, you don't need to fill up your closet in order to go to work. Like, you can fill up your closet as you go, as you get a feel for what do people wear, what's the air conditioning like, is it really cold in the office, is it really warm in the office? So don't buy a bunch of sweaters, right? And for the most part, especially if you're working downtown, like, the mall's right there. Like, you can go buy tomorrow's outfit right after work. I know, had I done that, I would have saved so much money because I bought a lot of really formal outfits. And even when I went to the client, nobody wore a blazer. So I have like two $200 blazers hanging in my closet that rarely saw the light of day. Like, so painful. That's another thing I did, was like, a lot of the stuff I spent a lot of money on, like, let's say blazers, I was like, oh, it's timeless. But that's not true. Like, I don't believe that there's much women's clothing that's actually timeless. Like, sometimes it circles back, but like, if we were to look in our mom's closets, we'd see blazers with like huge shoulder pads, like pointy shoulders. Like, one day our blazers are going to look like that, right? So they're not actually timeless. So they're not really worth investing in either, I don't think. Like,
Yeah. Are there any other big messages that you would want someone to keep in mind when they're starting a new job? Anything that you want to add on?
I think a good summary is like, don't rush. Like, you don't need to rush into, dressing like you make 6 figures. You don't need to rush into owning a property if you can't afford it, or having a luxury apartment if you can't afford it. Like, you just don't need to rush. I think slow down, enjoy like all the different life stages, including like new grad is a life stage, and you don't need to be a fancy new grad. Like, you can do it your own way and just enjoy that process. And I think you'll save yourself like a lot of headaches and financial mistakes that way.
Definitely. That's really, really great and super important advice.